All right, welcome to this recorded edition of the Open Dialogue Sessions with r3.0 Redesigned for Resilience and Regeneration. And we are really, really excited for this particular edition where we have 4 key players in what we're calling the first generation of the bioregional movement. So going all the way back to the 1970s when this movement started, and really there was this wave of activity that ran all the way through the early 2000s. And so we have 4 players who were active in there: Ana Ruiz Diaz, Laura Kuri, David Haenke, and Tad Montgomery. You're going to have a conversation that we're recording right now that you're watching right now. And this is teeing up a broader conversation that's intended to start the bridging process or the web weaving process with the current generation of bioregional activists. So with that framing in mind, I want to first start with a round of brief introduction from each of you online right now. So we'll start with Anna and then go to Laura and then David and Tad, and each of you speaking for maybe about 5 minutes to introduce yourselves with sort of a leaning of how you intersected with the bioregional movement. So with that, Anna, let's start with you.
Thanks, Bill Bowie. This is Ana Ruiz Diaz, and I am an ecologist with a bioregional perspective. I have a PhD on physical anthropology. I am a co-founder of the Vision Council Guardians of the Earth, which is a network of ecology teachers, artists, therapists, and scientists working on events and Earth rights since 1991. I worked for the class action lawsuit that banned permits to sow commercially transgenic corn in Mexico since September of 2013. And I am a member of the Union of Scientists Committed with Society. I started saying that I have a bioregional perspective because ever since I met the bioregional movement of the north of the continent, I learned skills that have a profound impact and effect in my life, in my daily life, in my family, and in my ecological work. And I have found incredible friends, advisors, counselors, and mentors in the women and men that form and put together the congresses in the North. And I worked very hard to make possible to have a congress in 1997 in Mexico, to have it continental. And ever since, my life has changed. Thank you.
That's great, Anna. Thank you so much. Laura, over to you.
Hello, everybody. This is Laura Kuri. I am an environmental teacher with the bioregional perspective also. I also, as Ana Ruiz, am part of the co-founder of the Consejo de Visiones Guardianes de la Tierra, Earth Guardians Vision Council. And also I support Ana and some other friends with this the fight against Monsanto. We have already for 11 years stopped Monsanto for growing transgenic corn in Mexico. And at the same time, I'm also working in the forest, in the Gran Bosque de Agua. But how I get into the bioregional movement, we were part of the environmental movement in Mexico, and we realized that we need to know more about how in other places of the world, the environmental movement has been more success, because we have been, in that moment, the environmental movement in Mexico was only loses and loses and loses. So we arrived to the deep ecology theory, and then from deep ecology theory, we arrived to bioregionalism, and we get to meet David Haenke and Peter Berg and some others that time, and we make un seminario, a seminary. We have for 3 years a seminary in which one we were studying and translating all the documents that David Haenke gave us. So we were, and others, Thomas Berry, Peter Berg, Chris Laurie, Patrick Sale, and some others, poets and other people. So we start reading all these books, all these papers, and we were translating it to Mexico. And then we were giving all these thoughts a root. Do we have a root in Mexico that talk us about this paper or not? So we were doing a kind of dance in between the theory in English and the practice in Spanish and in Mexico. So finally we arrived doing these consejos de visiones, and we start doing this match with the bioregional movement of the North, and we start doing the consejos, and at the same time we were participating in the bioregional congresses in the North. So we have that match, and we start making a marriage in between the North and the South, and that's how I get into.
I love your language. I love the image that you are introducing into this conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
David, over to you, please.
Oh my gosh, I don't know how to follow that. It's like, it's so beautiful. You too. Oh my gosh. Oh, such an honor to work with you over these years. Yeah, I think I've been a bioregionalist before I knew I was one, before I ever heard of it. I found myself being a bioregionalist at some point before I heard the word, in probably 1974, about 3 years after we had arrived, a bunch of us, in the Ozarks as back to the land movement. And the bioregional movement is heavily informed by the back to the land movement. And in turn, that comes out of the countercultural movements of the 60s. So there's a deep provenance there. And so those stories are intermingled. And I began thinking about the absurdity of a state line between if bisecting or dissecting the Ozarks as early as 1974, because I knew that there were a number of homesteaders down in so-called Arkansas. I call it Ozarkansas. And why should we even bother to address this absurdity of this geopolitical division between us, when in fact we were creating, a culture, an ecological culture ongoing that was completely synchronous, regardless of that silly line. And then I heard about bioregionalism a little bit later, and I thought, wow, that's the whole thing right there. And that started me on beginning to conceptualize and organize the first, as far as I know, the first bioregional Congress, the Ozark Area Community Congress. I started organizing that in around 1975, and the first one happened in 1980. And then we're working now on our 45th. And our theme this year is essentially regenerative culture. So that's enough. That's too much.
Just perfect, David. Thank you so much. Setting foundation for the conversation. Tad, over to you for your introduction of yourself and your connection to the bioregional movement.
I'm going to start with my home, which is as I define it, the Connecticut River Valley watershed. I've lived in this watershed for 36 years now, slowly moving north upriver. And I am now at the base of Mount Ascutney, which looks out over the Connecticut River itself. A bit of an anomaly geologically. It's a vestigial volcano right in the middle between the Green Mountains and the White Mountains. And I am bringing some all species representation. I've got one behind me here, Cecropia, and I also have brought, oh, will it not show up? Maybe if I hold it near my, it's not. Oh,
That's
there.
great.
There we go.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Hello. Hello.
Ganoderma tsuge. Well, Rishi, that's a bit of a, in some dispute whether it's an actual Rishi or just the American version of Rishi. My life's work is, I describe my mission as to build an ecological culture. And I put that somewhat on hold to work to address climate change. I am now a small city in New Hampshire's energy and facilities manager with the responsibility of decarbonizing the city. So a lot of my work is around energy, transforming the way we do energy in our society. And I've been at that dedicated to it for over 20 years, but my passion is really living systems. I've done a lot with permaculture, regenerative agriculture, agroforestry. And perhaps that's enough for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, David. Thank you, Tad. And I guess I should say that my connection to the four of you comes through Tad. Tad had attended a bioregional gathering in the southern part of the Connecticut River Valley about a month or two ago, and we met one another. And Tad at some point mentioned that he had worked or engaged with Dana Meadows, who is a sort of a hero of mine, and I sort of work in her pedigree, I guess. And I also have lived up and down the Connecticut River Valley, so there was real sort of commonality there. So I first wanted to say thank you, Tad, for making these connections that have led to this this conversation now. Part of what we talked about in those conversations was the key role that the Continental Bioregional Congresses played in the development of the bioregional movement in these early days and through this sort of what we're calling a first generation. And so what we decided was really having a round of conversation around the significance of the bioregional continental congresses would be a great way to reflect on the role that you all have played and all of your colleagues in this first generation of the bioregional movement. So David, you had mentioned a Congress, not at the continental scale, but at the Ozarks scale. Maybe we should start with you on your reflections on the bioregional congresses, and in particular the continental scale ones.
Well, so would you like me to start with OACC, with Oak, with the Ozarks bioregion, and then because the congresses came out of that experience?
Yes, that would be
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Yes, the Ozark Area Community Congress, just an awkward way of saying Oak, because we are Oak. We are the people of the Oaks and the Ozarks. The Ozarks wants to be forest, and it is, and the predominant species is oaks, and oak is the most profound. Who can say the most profound of tree species? But there's a book called The Nature of Oaks, and it's just limitless what they do, and they serve actually as a template. I call it an eco-holofractal of how one can actually create an entire economy, ecological economy, which is central to bioregionalism, is the creation of ecological economies, which are resonant with the ecological laws and principles of the bioregion itself. And so Oak was conceived of not as a conference, it's kind of an anti-conference. Basically, it is a horizontal, a gathering of peers, of the people who were invited on the basis of their involvement either in restoration or deep integrated living in their bioregions, and or representing their work in what I call ecological modalities. That being agriculture, energy, land tenure, health, all of these things. I tried to identify everyone that I could catalog or find in the bioregion and beyond for the first oak, to invite them as representatives. This is important. Congress means representation of their watersheds and or their particular interests in all these regenerative ecological design modalities. So it's a confluence of all of these ecologically resonant ideas and practices to meet together in this egalitarian format, and actually come to consensus on a body of agreements, which we called initially our Green Constitution, or our green laws. And this formed the basis of our collective ethos, ecologically resonant ethos. And we spent 4 years working together in consensus work to come up with our resolutions in a consensus process. So it was, and it wasn't focused on workshops and presentations. It was focused on committee work and plenary meetings based on consensus, where we were trying to essentially get our story straight. And that model is something that got translated by resolutions in the Congresses, the first 2 Congresses, into an initiative that I suggested to go continental with this particular template. And the second Ozark Congress consensed upon a resolution in 1981 with the attendance of Planet Drum representatives who came from the Bay Area, from Shasta, to join us at that Congress, and we resolved that I would be empowered to begin to organize the first North American Bioregional Congress based on that ecological Congress template that had been pioneered by the Ozark Area Community Congress. I proceeded to begin to do that organizing work in 1981, and it took 3 years of work. But the first Continental Bioregional Congress and North American Bioregional Congress 1 convened in May of 1984.
And where was that held, David?
That was held in the tall grass prairies of And I don't think it's really identified as a discrete bioregion. It's just north of the Ozarks and southeast of Kansas City, not far from Kansas City, but north of the Ozarks.
And I know that, Tad, you started attending Continental Bioregional Congresses soon thereafter. So maybe going to you next. But David, do you want to just say a little bit before we go on to Tad, since you were present at those original Continental Congresses, just maybe say a little bit about sort of the distinction between sort of happening at the Ozark scale and what you felt emerging by gathering at the continental scale?
The format of the congresses was presented at the first Continental Congress in May of '84 as a template for conducting the Congress. The people present, there were about 200 plus from all over the continent. Unfortunately, we had no representation from south of the border and just a few from north of the border. So that was a real limitation, but we were very conscious of that. But the purpose of the Congress really all along from all 10 of them was not to actually have the Congress or to reify it, make a thing out of it. The purpose of it was to bring people together in order to share ideas and form new bioregional organizing initiatives in other bioregions and watersheds. So it was an effort to create the seeding of the bioregional movement in an organizing pulse, if you like, not to have the Congress in and of itself. I hope, and that's really important because that is attendant to really perhaps the future of any possible gatherings in person in the Congress context. Maybe the time for that, is not anymore a thing, because we did that, and it wasn't easy to bring all these folks together with no very vestigial budgets. We started out with a $5,000 grant, and we kept using that, rolling it over and over and adding to it year after year. And I don't know how it happened, but anyway, that's enough. But yeah, the Continental Congresses were so astounding for one reason, because they lasted from between 5 and 9 days. And an incredible thing happens when you gather in the name of the earth in an ecocentric context, which I consider an article of faith of the bioregional movement, is ecocentrism, as opposed to anthropocentrism. It is a magical knitting that happens after a few days in that context. And it's something that is really almost impossible to describe. And just one more thing, one reason why the bioregional congresses are not as well known as they might be is because we did not allow media to come to the congresses to report on it unless they were willing to participate and register and participate for the entirety of the event and be a participant of the Congress, because we believed that no one would know what it was like to be in that in the Congress and that experience unless they were actually a participant, and then after that then it was okay to write about it. But otherwise it would just be a caricature, because there's nothing like it that people had ever experienced before. It was not a conference. It was not like anything people had been involved with before. It was all consensus work, all again, horizontal, plenaries, committees reporting back to plenary. And we had probably the world's greatest consensus facilitator, Carolyn Estes. My gosh, absolutely legendary. And that was one of the things that made the Congresses what they were when Carolyn was there to facilitate us.
Thank you so much, David, for setting such a foundation of understanding of the Continental Bioregional Congresses. Tad, from our first conversations, you mentioned sort of, coming to this very soon after where David just left off. So maybe over to you to share sort of how you came into this and what your perspective was at that time and now upon reflection is on the significance of the Continental Bioregional Congress process and movement.
I think it was around the age 13 or 14. I got a visceral sense that the world was not as it should be, that somehow we had gone way off track. And I didn't really understand a lot of that, but just something in my body, something in my mind and my spirit said, things are not good. And I started looking for ways that I could contribute to the restoration of what at the time I didn't really understand. Fast forward to the summer of 1986, I think. And I am a research associate for a ecological think tank called the New Alchemy Institute. Beautiful, haughty sort of a name. And I take the summer to go and lead a campaign to clean up the St. Lawrence Seaway under an organization that Abbie Hoffman founded in hiding when he was being hunted by the FBI, called Save the River. And I remember under a lamp late at night talking with the director, who was a Greenpeace in Greenpeace management, but takes this summer to work with this organization. And he pulled out this brochure that talked about this Bioregional Congress in Michigan. And we just marveled over this simple little brochure listing all these sponsoring organizations and some of the theme and the purpose, and something inside me said, I'm going to that. So my brother Mark joined me, and we drove to Leelanau, Michigan for what was the second Continental Bioregional Congress. And it was one of those events that, I'll back up a little bit and say that I believe we are all born into the world with a specific mission that we have chosen to carry out in this life. And at that Congress, I touched that mission, and I felt like I had met others with the same general mission in life. And I said, I want to be a part of this. I want to help to make this happen. So I signed up to be on the coordinating council for the next one, 2 years hence, which is the third Continental Congress, that was an astoundingly beautiful event in Squamish, British Columbia. And I spent 2 years helping to organize that event, and organized in conjunction with that event a permaculture design course, because it dawned on me that bioregionalists could really benefit from learning some of what we refer to as the tools of reinhabitation. So I organized a permaculture course, and Michael Pilarski came to the Congress and was the primary teacher in that course at the First Land Trust in Canada, Linnea Farm on Cortes Island. Mm-hmm. And then took on from that the primary organizing responsibilities for the Fourth Continental Congress, which was in the Gulf of Maine, working primarily with Gary Lawless Beth Leonard, his partner from the Gulf of Maine bookstore, and a number of others from that community, that bioregion. And we, that Congress happened in, it must have been 92. And took a break after that. The one after that was in Texas. And then another 2 years later was the one in Mexico that I was also on the organizing team for. So in a nutshell, unless you have specific questions about any of that, or
I think that's a wonderful handoff to Laura in terms of sort of your entry into the Bioregional Congress process, and the Continental Congress that was hosted by you and Anna and others in Mexico. I think that would be a great transition to that. So Laura, maybe you first to speak about your experience on that, and then Anna to round us out. Oh, and you're on mute right now.
There it is. As I told you before, we were having this seminary of bioregionalism. So by 1990, there was a Congress, Continental Congress in Maine. And by that time, the Bioregional Congress were able to invite a bunch of Mexicans and Latin people, no? So we were coming from, and we arrived to this Congress in the North. But before that, we were already doing environmental activism in Mexico, very strong. I was living in that time in the province called Morelos. And in this place in Morelos, it was where La Teología de la Liberación, the liberation theory from the Catholic Church, was born there with Ivan Illich. So there was this big movement through the church to get to work with the town people. So we were able to do environmental work with the town people in the many communities through the church. So we have this entrance to the communities, and we realized that there were many problems and we need to do something else. So when and at the same time, we were holding a lot of academic congresses, no? That are very boring, very interesting, but they are very boring. So when we arrived to this marvelous Congress in Maine, we get completely surprised to see all these anarchists and beautiful people talking in little circles, doing the plenaries. And we already were studying a little bit about consensus, but we really didn't know what it was till we have our teacher, Caroline Estes, teaching us. And I was just so happy of all the topics that were taking held in these congresses. But at the same time, I wanted to know, how do they organize to make these beautiful events? So I put my energy not only in the topics that I wanted to be on, also in how do they organize themselves to make these congresses. So by the time we came back to Mexico, we used to have these academic congresses, or we used to have the indigenous congresses that are very slow or very artistic, other kind of congresses, very artistic. So we wanted to make a mixture in between the academic congress, the indigenous congress, the artist congress, and the bioregional congresses. So we make a mixture in between all these different movements to make the Consejo de Visiones Guardianes de la Tierra, to make the Earth Guardians congresses, no? Vision Council. So that's how we start making a very fine thread in between the different movements to make the Consejo become alive. And since we went to Maine, I remember David, Peter, etc., they were telling us, why don't we make a Congress together? And we say, yes, but wait a minute, because we don't have this experience of doing this kind of congresses. So wait a minute till a few time till we be ready to hold an international congress. So by that time, we start holding congresses each year. We have the first one in Temuaya, and in this place they start the first native languages university in Mexico. And then we have the second Congress in Mazunte, and Mazunte became the first fishing environmental community. They named themselves an environmental community. And then in the next one was in Ancillaga, and in this place in Veracruz, they start a very beautiful project about environmental problems, environmental resolutions, and development around this beautiful lake. Then we have another Congress that was in Michoacan, and this starts a nice number of new eco communities around the area of Michoacan. And then we went to Jalisco, and we have another one there in a nice community. And after these 5 experience, we realized we were ready to hold the big bioregional congress that we call El Congreso de las Américas, no? The Congress of the Americas, because we were having together North, Medium, and South America, no? So we have this beautiful event. We were around 1,500 people in Tepoztlan, and that's when the Green Party came to Mexico, and we stopped we asked them to get together the next week in another place because we didn't want this event to be politicized and be held by the politics, because in Mexico, the Green Party doesn't have nothing to do with the Green Party in the North. So I think that what we do in these consejos is that we celebrate the movement. It's like everywhere it's happening, many things about environmental or energy or indigenous people or arts, whatever, the topics that we wanted to talk about in the congresses. And this happened all the time everywhere. And the Congress, wait a minute, this sound outside my house. The Congress is the moment to celebrate the movement. The movement is happening all the time, everywhere, but we gather to celebrate this movement of Of course, there is an environmental, environmental topics are like a transversal topic in everywhere. Art with environment, culture with environment, kids with environment, youth with environment. Everything has to be with environment. That's just like the heart of the Consejo de Visiones, no? And that's it. Well, when we arrived to these North American Bioregional Continental Congresses, what for me was very special, and it still touched my heart till the day of today, it was the All Species Project. In all the continental congresses, we were not only thinking and taking decisions about human being needs, even though, no, but we were starting to be we were stopping to be anthropocentric, and we were starting to be biocentric or ecocentric, as David said. So start thinking, what does the eagle need to tell us? What does the snake? What does the mineral? What does the fungi? Whatever. We start taking to our congresses the other voices that we don't listen in words, in palabras, no? So for me, that was very important. And till the day of today, I still trying to put their voice in words that the human beings we could understand. I think that's right. That's okay for the moment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm really appreciating the language that each of you is using, and you know, the language is so descriptive, and has such depth to it that you're using, and also sort of what each of you described of the work that you were doing, sort of that led you into this, and that work has continued and been amplified by your work in bioregionalism. So Anna, it'd be great to hear from you about your experience with the Continental Bioregional Congresses, and in particular, sort of how that intersects with the work that you were doing beforehand and the work that you do ongoingly.
Thank you, Bill. Yes, I want to start saying the effect, or what was amazing for me to have the experience to go to 2 bioregional congresses in North America, in Kansas and in Earth Heaven. For me, it was amazing, both nature settings and the experience to live 7 days in a nature place. But in terms of format, I would say that facilitation and decision making by consensus was like the most striking thing. And as of people attending, the amount of teachers, activists, local entrepreneurs, and healers, and their input on their own bioregions. And there were like 2 key words for me that I learned from bioregionalism. One was place, and the other one was watershed. So place, where do you live, where do you work? Place, it was like an opening rainbow in my mind. And the watershed concept and way of thinking. And I'm still working with All Species Project with Chris Wells. I've been working for 7 years with him, focusing on corn and people. And we've written a couple of books and made 4 seminars in Mexico with farmers and growers. And but in terms of format, what I just said. But I want to stress one other thing, and it's the budget issue. We, as Laura described, some of the events that we were doing ever since 1991, we didn't have budget, we didn't have money to do it. So this happened with, and has happened for 18 times, with cooperation, with support, with the input of talents of everyone at the same time, like focusing on really making this happen. And I want to stress that, because it's not like another congresses or events that work the other way around, how many money you have, and so then you can invite and do and buy food and so on. And we are incredibly grateful with the people of the North that pay our plane tickets to get there and feed us and everything. And the other thing that is very singular is the no media thing. And also in our events in Mexico, I have been one of the most outspeaking persons forbidding media for being there, because this is a place, a moment, a time for us to hear each other, learn from each other, and media to me is disruptive. And I think that I want to stress that this happens and is ongoing, because each of us really inputs its own energy and its group's energy to do these things. And without the bioregional congresses in North America, our movement of the Vision Council in Mexico wouldn't be surviving. We have learned so much about how to organize ourselves, how to work, facilitating our meetings. Beatrice Briggs has been our generous teacher, and she teach 15 or 20 of us for over a year in this skill. And that has really set a difference in our ecological movement in Mexico. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. And I got, thanks to Laura, I was introduced to Beatrice, and I've had an opportunity to connect with her. She's now living fairly near to where I do. So such a lovely connection point there. And Anna, one of the things I appreciate is what you just mentioned in terms of what you gained from those your peers in the North. And I remember from our original call, that sentiment was reflected by those of you who are in the North. So I just want to use this as an opportunity, David and Tad, maybe for you to reflect on the kind of mutuality and reciprocity that this entailed.
David, do you want to go first?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned in our exploratory session, I didn't feel like the Continental movement really, as I said earlier in that session, became inspirited. When it was in the Congresses were inspirited, and that is something that can be described, but it is. We often describe them as ceremonial villages that meet together for that span of time. But when the people came from Mexico in 1988 at the Cascadian Continental Congress, it was like an incredible spiritual homecoming. I can't describe how profound it was. Those first folks that came, Arturo, Alberto, Cristina, it was like a homecoming, like we'd known each other somehow and had been waiting to meet one another. I remember when I first met Arturo, I think we hugged each other for like 10 minutes. I don't know what was going on, but it was really profound. And then from that point forward, the participation from the South was just unimaginably enriching, and everyone learned so much from them who were us. I mean, it was all seamless. There was no them or us. It was just all of us together sharing what we had in common, which was our love and our resonance and our really spiritual connection to the earth, to Gaia. Anyway, it was the dynamism that came up from say like epitomized in the person of Alberto Ruiz. When Alberto, I don't know how to pronounce Buenfil. Did I say that right? Alberto, Subcomandante Alberto. What a true force of nature, and the caravannistas, the bus that went down for the south from all through into South America, and that the corn bus. I'm just dropping alluding to things here that were monumental. The connections to the Huehue Coyote eco village, where our hosts in the essentially the hemispheric bioregional gathering, which was in Mexico. It's just a unimaginably deep cultural, biocultural, ecocultural confluence that so enlivened and enriched and engaged, inspirited all of us. I know I'm speaking very generally because it's just it's an immense depth of sensibility, energy, and experience, and it completed it brought to a fruition, a completion of the vision of the bioregional um, um, uh, apprehension of the continent. Yeah, I wish I could be more articulate than that, but it's some things I just cannot. They're too deep to speak. I don't know. So grateful.
I'm hearing the sort of challenge of putting it into words, and I'm also hearing you articulate this very clearly. So
okay.
Did you have something to add? I remember in our preliminary conversation that sort of mutualism and reciprocity is something that you voiced very clearly. Yes. Yeah.
I think that one of the shadows that Americans carry is a need to talk. And when we get together, we talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And when the Mexicans first arrived at the bioregional congresses, as David said, it grounded us in a way that was beyond talking. They brought a visceral sense of culture and how culture can be part of a transformative process that I hadn't really felt in the bioregional movement before that. American culture is what?
Yeah.
Football, birthday parties, church.
Non-existent.
and lacking in any kind of a connection to the national world, for the most part. And to see these people from the South embodying something that I had never known was possible, and to bring that and offer that to us at our congresses. It, like as David said, it was like we sort of came home to something that, or found a part of us that ourselves that we didn't know was missing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And really sort of focusing on the role of culture, and Tad, it's really striking to hear you say that really this confluence raised the role of culture, because bioregionalism has traditionally been about the marriage, to use the term Laura used earlier, the marriage between sort of the physical geographical region and the earth that is that is representing that, with the sort of the human cultural side of things. And yet, that's maybe words. And what I'm hearing you say is that you all experience that. And that's something that we've sort of spoken about, is sort of the role, the fundamental role of culture that is also sort of informing the current generation of bioregionalists. There's sort of like an understanding of the primary role of culture, but our sense is that it's different. Like, I would be alone in representing this second generation right now, so I don't think that I can speak for that, and that's something that we're going to try to do in the second edition of this. But I would love to hear from you all sort of the what you experienced as the key role of culture in the bioregional movement that you sort of developed, and how that cultural underpinning really tied this into the work that you were doing and are continuing to do until this day. So really trying to bring it into the present. Yeah, Tad.
So I want to start by pointing at Anna and saying, you glossed over very quickly your work with corn, with maize. And this is a beautiful, profound example of bioregional culture being brought to bear in a way that has profound impact in resurrecting and reviving and maintaining culture that goes back thousands of years. So would you talk a bit more about your work with corn and the All Species project?
Yeah, you read my thoughts. I was wanting to raise my hand to give an example, you know? And since I met Nelson Denman and Chris Wells, we started working with John McLeod in doing this book that is called The Amazing Story of a Grass Corn, called Corn. Well, The Amazing Grass Called Corn, A Story of Maize. And what is singular about this book, that is a coloring book, is that it tells the story of corn from the United States perspective, where corn is one of the things people in the United States are very proud because they grow industrially in monocultures and trains. It really changed and shaped many of the story of the Northwest and the Corn Belt and all that. So half of the book is the story of the United States and how they are so proud of their industrial corn. And the other half I wrote with Chris Wells tells very little about the origin of the native varieties in Mexico, the center of origin. And it devotes like 5 pages to explain why transgenic corn is what it is and why it's so harmful. And it ends up with how animals identify transgenic corn and don't eat it, like deer and rats, you know. Whereas other wild animals definitely go for the organic or non-transgenic corn, and ends up with a calendar of how to grow corn, and these are things that we share in the North and in the South. Yet the South add things like feeding the ants, feeding the birds, like methods of natural control of pests. And I'm stressing this because the diversity of corn is a result both of biology and of culture. Culture is all, in few words, culture is all we know. And all we know about corn has been learned and transmitted from generation to generation 1,000 times. And this has lasted 7,000 years. And the importance of diversity of corn is that it's what makes this crop resilient all over and can feed poor people all over the country. And the corns of the plains in the coasts are small because they sustain the big hot weather, and in the mountains they are tall because they have. Anyway, what I'm saying is corn grown in milpas with a family and town structure, with town help, with neighbors help, is essentially different than growing it in the United States with tractors. So what I'm trying to say is there are 2 ways to have corn. One is supported with culture and has been resilient for 1,000 years and has been feeding people. And the other is destroying the earth destroying the people. It's not uniting. You know, farmers are bankrupt, and few companies are really making profit and gaining from this. So I think I couldn't have reached this perspective without the perspective of Chris Wells and the North. And I very much appreciate his help. We did it in Spanish and in English. We did 1,000 issues, and then we did 2,000 issues in the second edition, and we are out of it. It's all over schools. No, it's gone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anna. That the metaphor, as I was hearing it, of the corn that is grown in the way that it has been, you know, since time immemorial, is almost a metaphor for the role of culture in the bioregional movement. If I'm sort of picking up on you accurately.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
yeah, David, I had to say.
I just want, I couldn't, I don't want to speak out of turn in any way, but I mentioned earlier that our theme for this 45th annual Oak Congress coming up in October is essentially regenerative culture, or how the nature of the bioregion actually shapes the culture of the people who live in the bioregion. It's part of the fundamental definition of bioregionalism, is how human culture is modified by the nature of the bioregion. And what Anna just talked about is the absolute quintessence of that. And a great percentage of the people who are in the bioregional movement, wherever they are actually actively involved in some form of culture in the form of cultivation, you know, of organic permaculture, or agroforestry, or silvoforestry, or it really goes to the root of the word culture, and it makes it biocentric, as opposed to what people think about most of it in the world as human culture, which is almost entirely anthropocentric. But it's such a powerful dimension of the movement, and it reminds me that in the 80s there was the Hopi prophecies were going around, and people were the Hopi people were desperately trying to get people to wake up and understand the plight of the planet, and kind of reflected in that film Koyaanisqatsi, which came out in the early 80s, which came out of Santa Fe, and people that Chris Wells knew, but the Hopi elders had said that no one can speak the prophecies of the Hopi people unless they grow corn. And I felt, whoa, there it is. If we're going to speak a deep ecological truths and live them, we should be involved deeply in working with the earth, with the land, saving seed, growing food, or associated with endeavors that protect the seed, protect the land, nurture, regenerate the land. These things are elemental to the bioregional culture, and these are things that are celebrated deeply by the representation of that work at the bioregional congresses.
David, I really appreciate you bridging back to the present with the theme of this year's Ozark Congress, Bioregional Congress, being regenerative culture. And that's certainly a term that's been popularized in particular by a member of what we might call this generation, the current generation of bioregionalists, of Daniel Christian Wahl, who we at r3.0 have intersected with in very generative and regenerative ways. I appreciate the sort of bridging from the past of the history of the bioregional movement into the ongoing vibrancy of that. So you sharing your ongoing hosting of congresses, Anna, you sharing the work that you're doing ongoingly around advocacy, for traditional forms of corn and against the transgenic. I wanted to just invite Laura and Tad, maybe you, Laura, first, to similarly, presence us in this moment in terms of sort of how you experience the significance of bioregionalism and sort of the work that you've been doing for these many years. I see you're in movement, so if we need to go to Tad first on that question, we can do that. So yeah, while Laura's moving, Tad, if you're open to it, might you weigh in on that that invitation? It looks like Laura, you're speaking, but you're on mute. There we go. Okay, great. Tad, maybe over to you to share with us your thoughts on this while Laura gets settled in.
I don't have a bioregional group that I am currently active with. My hope at some point, perhaps after I retire, would be to foment a bioregional congress of the Connecticut River watershed, but that's not going to happen anytime soon because I know how much work it takes, and I just don't have the energy for that right now. But I can point to what others do, and I could talk about my own life and how I celebrate my bioregion. But like the Kansas area watershed, as I understand it, instigated a beautiful calendar creation process where it's a circular calendar that starts in January and goes around and returns to January. And instead of dates and the birthdays of famous people and holidays, it has what is happening in the world at this time, in the natural world. What species are migrating through, what flowers blossoming, what is the ice or snow doing? What is the phase of the moon? Where are the different constellations? And it is a wonderful process. Many communities have taken that on now and have created their own bioregional calendars, and you can actually make it so it spins it so that you always have the time, whatever's happening right now is in the vertical axis. And there David Haenke is showing an Ozark version of just that. And it is a wonderful way to sort of stay in touch with the natural world. And another similar process of bioregional culture is, love it, David, mapping.
That's the Ozark Seasons Wheel. I just wanted, you were talking about the Seasons Wheel, and so they did one for Cobb, but here's the Ozark one. That it's the wheel of the seasons and all the critters that come out at the different times of the year. I know it's not going to show up very well here, but anyway, an example of such a thing. Sorry, couldn't help myself.
Thank you. Okay. And maybe we can provide a link to one of those as part of this.
Okay.
And another very strong aspect of culture in the bioregional movement has to do with mapping. Perhaps the foremost in that regard is the Cascadia, Mike McCloskey, and the beautiful, wonderful mapping that they've done of the Cascadia bioregion. But other groups around the continent have followed similarly. I have a beautiful map of the Cayuga River Basin in upstate New York, one of the Finger Lakes that Ithaca is in. And it is just a delightful map of that small watershed. And there are many. I have one of the Hudson River watershed somewhere. And is a process that Peter Berg and Judy Goldhaft have used many, many times to introduce people to the concept of a bioregion and bioregionalism, is to do a mapping exercise. Laura, your turn. You're back and resettled now.
Okay, sorry, I live just downtown and here it's so soundy. My mother always says, oh, your house is very sonora, very, I don't know, sounding. It's a lot of things happening all the time, but now it came a very loud one. Well, I was going to another point. I like whatever we have been talking about, what Tad just said about all these courses of David that Peter Berg developed with Judy, and all what is happening in Ozarks, and what Anna told you about the corn. But I was thinking that for me, one of the most important things that I learned about bioregionalism is that you have to find these very few people that are working on politics in your area or in your place, and support them to have changes on laws. And here in Mexico, we start with Ana Ruiz, exactly. The first law that we tried to change, it was the law of from recycling, envases y embalajes. ¿Cómo se dice eso, Ana? Pon tu micrófono. Tu micrófono.
Yeah, we tried to create the law of responsible packing, and to make industrial people responsible for their own packages. And we failed, but it was the second generation of youth ecologists who make it work. And now in Mexico City, we separate our garbage, and it's we have the biggest compost plant all over Latin America. And well, anyway, excuse. Go ahead, Laura.
So then the next law we could try to change, and we changed it, was the energy law. Because in Mexico before, energy was just petroleum, no? There was no any other energy considered in our laws. So after another consejo, we got to the chambers, these chambers, and we changed the law of energy, and we put the word renewable energies in the law. Oh, and now Mexico, in this moment exactly, is building the biggest solar energy plant in the Desierto de Sonora, and this is a project in between Mexico and United States. So that's another law we changed. Then through the bioregional congresses, we also changed the law by the watershed concepts, and we changed the law now to make, if you have to do el plan de ordenamiento territorial, ¿cómo digo eso?
The territorial ordering plan.
The
territorial ordering plan in each bioregion or state.
Okay. Now all these plans, they have to be done by watershed, and that's another of the bioregional movement changes in the law. And we also have another law, but I don't remember now. But well, we've been working in many levels. So we go and work with the campesinos, as Anna said, and tell you before. But we also go and work with the politicians, and we make the laws change. And this has been seen in the whole country. All Mexico has been influenced by the bioregional movement in a way. They don't know what we do, no?
Mm. And what I'm
We were
say-
inspired by the bioregional movement to do the changes, no? And now this is happening in the whole country. So bioregional movement has been very important in Mexico.
Can I give another example?
Yes, please.
For instance, maybe the person that knows more about the bioregional perspective in Mexico is Laura Kuri here. And she has been a teacher in dozens of seminars and events. Yet, her input and mine in the ongoing project that I want to say 2 paragraphs that I prepared, which is the class action lawsuit against Monsanto and DuPont, and why are we doing this? And why do we consider it a bioregional entrepreneur? Is because Laura has been facilitating and uniting this group of 53 farmers and persons that are scientists, producers, activists of pertaining to 20 different organizations of human rights, the seeds and the environment. What I'm trying to say is that Laura has been able to build a format of our way of meeting and really has united the core group that is supporting this enterprise. And it might not seem bioregional because it's not focused on one bioregion, but it is considering bioregions of the whole continent. For instance, Mexico has thousands of varieties of corn, but Peru has more, whereas the United States commercially grows 3 varieties. And there has been a time where we know that in Mexico we are responsible because Mexico is the center of origin and diversification. But and what is at stake is to look this diversity of corn. And why it is important? It happened in the 80s that a blight pest really was caught in the United States, and it was Mexican varieties of corn that saved the ship from wrecking.
That's right.
They have the potato blight in Ireland, and it was a potato from Peru that saved the world and the diet of thousands and millions of people. Let's remember that 7 million people died because of that in Ireland. And what I want to say is, in few words, this is political, legal, and bioregional work. We filed a lawsuit against Syngenta, Dow, Monsanto, and DuPont, and the Mexican Departments of Agriculture and of the Environment. This class action has lasted 10 years. And our main argument is to protect corn diversity as a human right. And the main achievement of the process has been that the courts granted an injunction to ban the government to provide permits to sow genetically modified corn commercially all over Mexico. So this has lasted, and we have been able to sustain it for 10 years, since 2013. But there's another 2 victories in our lawsuit. Monsanto and Syngenta went straight up to the Supreme Court and tried to ban class actions in Mexico, period. And then, of course, tried to ban our injunction or precautionary measure. And it took the Supreme Court 2 years, but it filed on our side, and they ruled that judges in a class action can dictate any injunction to protect the rights of a collective and ratify the cautionary measure banning permits to commercially sow transgenic corn in Mexico. And as I stressed, both rulings were challenged or placed by transnationals. So in this class action lawsuit, we are not asking for money. We are asking to end for good the damage. We seek to end the damage. And the trial is not over, and support from consumers and advocates in Africa, Asia, Europe, Central, South, and North America is needed. If we win this trial in Mexico, many other countries will also win, because corn has become part of the culture of so many countries and so many people. So thanks for letting me tell you a little bit about it.
Yeah, what's really resonating from both what you said, Laura, and what you just said, Anna, is what I'm hearing is agency. That at the heart of the bioregional movement is a sense of agency to act, including using the legal mechanisms in support of this ecocentric cultural way of being. So I really appreciate that, bringing that into the table. I'm seeing that sort of our time is nearing its having run its course, and what I want to do is the next conversation that we want to have, we're wanting to really connect those of the four of you who are have been in what we're calling the first generation with the broader bioregional movement, what we might call the second generation. So I guess I'd want to end with just a round of each of you reflecting on what either questions might you have about the current generation of bioregional movement, or what learnings might you impart. So really just voicings to this current generation, which includes me. I will be listening with my ears wide open. I've actually already received so much from you, but I just want to end with that kind of invitation that each of you reflect on that just briefly, but before we round things out. And I'll open it up to whoever wants to speak first, and we'll kind of take the order organically. Yeah.
Okay, what I think it's like the base of bioregional movement is to ask you and ask whoever you can this question: where is your water coming from, and where does it go when it goes out of from your house? How does that water get to your house, and how does it goes when it goes out of your house? Which products you use? How are you working on making that water bad or good? Just that, just water. That's it. For me, with that, you can, if you have the answer to that question, that's enough to start.
Beautiful. 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 Yes.
Mm-hmm.
David, you're off mute. Maybe over to you next.
Okay. I'd like to know, well, I would like the experience that we have had in the first, let's call it the first generation, the bioregional organizing phase of the bioregional movement, which is exemplified by the Congresses. What is it that we might, along with whatever is contained in this session, contribute to what is going on now with the second generation? And so that that cross conversation, which Bill, you are being the catalyst for, and you are being the intermediary for here. How might we assist one another in between the two movements? What are the things that the second generation can take from our experience that will be helpful to this this movement, which is seems to be strongly connected with, you know, the regenerative culture, regenerative everything. Um, how can we help one another and inform one another? And I guess it's pretty vague, it's pretty general, but you know, I think it's just helpful, I think, for the second generation to have a sense of what has been happening since really 1973, when the Frisco Bay Muscle Group, which then thereafter became Planet Drum Foundation, began its work in the Bay Area, and then spreading the word along the Planet Drum about bioregionalism, and the immense power of that that paradigm to really help organize and inform the organization of almost any endeavor that human beings wish to engage in, that has a resonance with the earth. I know that's pretty general, but it's just about, you know, how might we help one another to in transmitting this immense body of experience that we had, and in helping to define what the bioregional movement is, and what it is now and where it's going. I hope that makes some kind of sense.
I deeply appreciate your humility, David. What you were describing as general and vague, I'm hearing as a profound offering and invitation of cultural interweaving. So thank you for that.
I want to say, I would like to say something. I will not use the word second generation. I like second wave.
Second wave.
Segunda ola, wave, yes, because generations is something different, but I like as we do it the first time, the second wave, okay? Yeah. If we agree, yeah, okay. Thank you.
That's great. Anna,
I like, yeah, I like that.
I know. I want to input something to the question.
Yeah.
I would ask the second wave, as David said, how can we assist? And I would suggest or invite, as a cultural grounding exercise, to have a map in a table in your house and start drawing in that map things that happen in the calendar as the moon, as the species that appear, like Tad was mentioning, including insects and birds. And I would strongly suggest anybody working ecologically to approach artists and healers, because we need their input, their passion, their freshness, and their truthness. And to me, artists and healers have been real important mentors. That's what I would ask. Do you have a healer nearby? Do you have an artist nearby? Would you consider inviting them to your next meeting or wherever? Something like that.
That's an invitation that I am glad to take up myself, and to also impart to my fellows in the second wave. Thank you. We had been using this first generation as a placeholder, sort of. Love how this emerged, you know, in the process of discussing it. So. And I'm actually, I have a healer and artist who I live with, who I will convey that invitation to, and she will deeply appreciate it. Well, Anna, thank you. Tad, over to you with your thoughts on this this invitation or prompt.
Quickly following on what Anna just said, another aspect of culture that the Mexicans have brought is this tradition of what are called curanderas, which are a deeply embedded system of healers that are very closely affiliated with the indigenous peoples of Mexico. And I think Laura will probably attest to this, that it's not far off to say that my life may have been saved by one of these curanderos once, when everything that everybody else had tried had failed, with something I caught in a marketplace in Mexico. One thing I want to impart, and then one thing I want to just raise as a question. David and Anna and Laura have tried tonight to, and I have tried to convey a hint of the power and beauty and life-affirming nature of a bioregional congress or a Consejo de Visiones. Impossible to convey in words. In this short couple of hours here, we've tried. I would say that I feel something when I am at one of these events that I don't feel elsewhere in my life. A part of me opens up and blossoms. Being around the people who come to these events, who are also as dedicated as I am to this work. And I would also say that there is some spirit that comes or is formed at these gatherings that's unlike anything I have felt at any other gathering. And I marvel that people have grabbed with gusto the bioregional movement who have never been to one of these events. I find that both inspiring and very curious. I want to explore that some, or I'm not sure where to go with that. My question to the second wave who listened to this series of talks is, how do you, or how can we work together to rekindle a love of the earth in the people in our communities, and get them to connect in ways that have been lost for most of the people in our society, and that sense of place that Laura mentioned, that most of us in the bioregional movement think is sort of foundational. So that's my question.
Thank you, Tad. I'm going to invite all five of us to let what we've just shared over this time just to sink in for a brief moment, and invite anyone who's listening in to just let this sink in. And I also want to really deeply thank the four of you, Anna, Laura, David, and Tad, for sharing so generously of your experience of the learnings that you've had over this long period of bioregioning that you have been doing. And I just want to end with saying that by the time that you're watching this, the five of us will have had a better sense of how to carry this conversation forward. And so we have the sense of using the open dialogue approach that r3.0 has been using this year, that kind of emerged organically, and to connect with the second wave, the current wave, in an ongoing, that waves do not end. They connect with one another. That's one thing that's beautiful about waves. And waves are an inherent part of the fractal world that we live in.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that's what I'd like to end on, and over to you if any of you all would like to end our time together on. Yeah, Anna.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Tad. I really have to go now. But I love your request of singing in, because this has been my favorite time of the month. Bless you all.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna.
Muchas gracias, Bill. I'm so happy that you already get in touch with Bia. Please take care of her. She's just a treasure. It's one of our greatest treasures. And now it's on your hands. Please, really take care of her. Please.
Thank you.
You'll be so happy to do it, I'm sure.
It was a real pleasure, and it felt like that was part of the work that we're doing together was Beatrice. So thank you much for that that introduction. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.